It's time for this week's episode of Brandon Sports Talk, featuring in-depth interviews from those who are trending in the world of athletics. And now, here's the host of Brandon Sports Talk, Brandon Pate.
Welcome back to Brandon Sports Talk. In today's episode, I have the privilege to interview Andrew Ross, who is a major area soccer deputy commissioner. How are you doing today?
I'm doing good, Brandon. How are you?
I'm doing good. Can you talk about how you knew that you wanted to work in professional sports?
Yeah, so when I was applying for college, I wasn't quite sure. Everyone wants to go doctors, lawyers, which my family's got quite the lawyer background. So, but I played soccer competitively my whole life, and sports has always been a big part of my life. So, as I was applying for college, I applied pre-law probably everywhere except for Syracuse, which had a sport management program at the time. So I decided it was pretty much a no-brainer once I got the acceptance letter into the sport management program that I was going to venture into that. Now, that kind of started the door, but to be totally candid, when I did my first year of undergrad, I really wasn't totally sold on working in pro sports because I wasn't sure where I fit in, because everyone wanted to be an agent or go work in the NFL or work in the NBA, and it's nothing against those. It just didn't seem like a niche fit for me. And all of the data and things I'm learning are based on the NFL, which I never played football a day in my life. So for me, it really took until I was, I think, a junior in college before I had a professor who kind of opened my eyes and said, "What do you mean you can work in soccer? That'd be a great opportunity for you because it's a young industry as far as the big four sports and Major League Soccer and things going." So I read a book called How Soccer Explains the World. It opened my eyes and got my first internship with the Syracuse Silver Knights in the major indoor soccer league at the time, which was run by the USL. And then kind of the rest was history to where I am today.
What was your time like with the USL?
Yeah, I mean, the USL was one of the best experiences of my life. I had a great mentor there, David Wagner. Even my current partner, Chris Economides, he was a little bit higher up, so I didn't really get to know him very well at the time. But David Wagner he works for the NBA G League now. I mean, I could not have had a better person to kind of take me under his wing and teach me the ropes, challenge me. The league was still, not where it is today. I mean, it's completely skyrocketed. It was just the USL Pro Division. It was the first year that the LA Galaxy 2 were playing in the league. So things were still kind of new. Sac Republic, it was their first year. So it was really exciting to see. I mean, the games were still on YouTube. It was almost kind of where the MASL is today is where the USL was, 10 years ago at that point. So it was a great experience overall. I learned a lot, and personally, it skyrocketed my career because from there I was able to get to Orlando City and experience what it's like to work in Major League Soccer.
Of course, talking about Orlando City, the soccer club, can you talk about, of course, your experience as the account executive and what you did?
Yeah, I mean, it's funny when you're in the bigger organizations, you really have to kind of come into a cutthroat environment and really prove yourself. So I started at Orlando City in ticket sales, kind of worked my way up the ticket sales ladder and just kind of learned how the sales funnel and things work. Just tried to study as much as I could to learn how one of those bigger organizations work, whether it was, just having lunch with someone in the marketing department or the communications department, or where I wanted to be, which was the sponsorship sales department. I mean, you couldn't have asked for a better launch with having 65,000 people. I'll never forget what it was like to work in the box office on the initial game day on our inaugural game against New York City. And I had the only cell phone that scanned these thousands of pub crawl tickets that people didn't redeem prior to the game. And, just the overall atmosphere of what that did taught me a lot of how the sports industry is so fast paced, and that you really cannot take a day, because if you spend one day, you lose five. So it taught me a lot about the pace, a lot about what it's like to work in the major leagues, which is all experience I was able to take and apply, as I moved up the ladder, going back into the minor leagues.
Of course, can you talk about your time with the Florida Tropical Soccer
Yeah.
Club as the general manager?
So the Florida Tropics was a team that, as you mentioned, you had spoken with Andrew Haynes. So Andrew Haynes and I, he came up with the concept idea back in, I think it was 2015. And my old boss, when I was an intern in Syracuse, whose name is John Raymond, was the VP of Ops for the league. He said, "Hey, I've got an owner that has interest in coming down to Florida to start a indoor franchise. Would you have any interest in speaking with him?" I think he called me like 30 minutes later. Like, I don't even think it was an hour before he was on the phone with me, and we talked through it. And for me, I saw it as an opportunity. It was a big jump to go from, kind of a senior level ticket sales manager to a GM of a club from a startup position. It was challenging. I mean, was it the right time? I mean, there was never a right time, but I'm so thankful that I did do that jump, and for Haynes for giving me the opportunity, because I really learned a lot, and we grew that club, now to one of the top members of the MASL. But I mean, it was a great opportunity to experience the Lakeland community, to get to know a lot of really good people. Again, my main job, from the revenue standpoint was sponsorship. So I was able to get back into, corporate partnerships, which I certainly enjoyed. But it was just an overall, learning curve for me of what it meant to step into a management role and to really grow something from nothing. And it was unfortunate that COVID hit last year when we were kind of on our peak there. But to see, thousands of people come into an arena game in Lakeland, Florida, where they didn't even know what indoor soccer was prior to us starting a team there, was really proof that hard work and determination can really get you to be successful anywhere that you go.
What is RSV Sports?
Yeah, so RSV Sports is the company that my partner Chris Economides, who I mentioned, he's a former USL, MISL. He owned the Rochester Rhiners back in their heyday when they won the US Open Cup, and he's been a mentor of me. It was a company that we started after the pandemic hit, as we found a need for a lot of clubs, just kind of needing some consulting with how to navigate through the times, as we were trying to figure out where we were going to go next. We were in talks with the MASL about, taking over the M2, and there was a current group that already was existing with the license, and it was essentially a group of teams that were managing it. So Chris kind of brought me in and said, hey, let's kind of run the MASL, which is the MASL 2 and 3, which are our primary positions. But we just found a need for some other, ventures, and we wanted to keep the door open, because with his connections and, the work ethic that the two of us have, we started RSV Sports just to really be a vessel for clubs, maybe in the minor leagues and, the Division 4s of the world, or, the M2, M3s of the world, who are looking to get started and need that extra push. So the majority of what RSV does is the MASL 2 and MASL 3 management, but there is a small piece of it that consults with different people around the country to help them grow their franchises.
What was the transition like for you from going to the Florida Tropicals to the major area soccer league?
So the Florida Tropics, to go from that, it wasn't a huge curve, I would say. It's more to what it's like to go from a club position to a league position. So when you go from a club, you're doing the day-to-day, all the, setup, takedown, getting to your game, hiring your staff, selling tickets, selling sponsorship, versus the league. You're really, your focus is expansion, right? It's growing the league. So a big part about the difference was, I would say, I remember when I left from the USL to go to Orlando City and go back to the club game, you can win a championship at the club level. You can't win a championship at the league level. So that's probably the hardest thing to swallow when you're at the league level, is, you're putting all this work into helping, teams grow and expand, and, essentially globally, right? Because soccer is the world's game. So it's hard to not have one team to just say, I'm rooting for this team. But as a kid, I never really had a single team that I ever was like, this is my diehard, do or die team. So I always said I was meant to work in a league. I love being able to connect with all the different owners and partners and really work towards growing the sport of indoor soccer. So it's a blessing to be where I am and to be able to share the knowledge that I've gained through my experience with teams that are getting started up here.
What is the experience like, of course, working with owners?
Yeah, I mean, every owner is different. Some owners are way more experienced where you don't really have to be as hands-on, and it's more of a customer service side, and some are, this is their first go around into owning a pro sports team. So they need a lot of knowledge about how to get set up in their arenas or their facilities or their stadiums. What does their model look like? What does their staff look like? How do they raise sponsorship? How do they make money to fund the team? So I would say every owner is different. I certainly have gotten my training in working with different personalities. I was lucky enough to do a program called Leadership Lakeland a year ago, which was a year-long program that really opened my eyes that you really have to learn that everybody's got their own, benefits and their own, things that probably work against them. So it's really just trying to maintain that nice balance of keeping everybody happy, showing them that we're organized, that we're going to drive this thing forward and spend as much time possible to grow our league and make our league a prestigious organization amongst the other great leagues that the U.S. sports landscape has to offer.
What was it like whenever you got the opportunity to work with the major area sports league?
The Major Arena Soccer League. So, it was definitely it was a long negotiation to get to where we were. We had to piece a lot of different things together, and that certainly wasn't easy. However, as we got going, it got kind of more and more exciting. It definitely in the past 60 days has completely taken off once we finally made the announcement. But it was a long process to get going. So certainly exciting, but again, we still have a long way to go.
What are some of the things that you do as a deputy commissioner?
For the most part, like I said, a big part of it's expansion, but at the league office, we manage scheduling, maintain the minimum standards, we manage the league calls. But a big part of what we're doing now is how do we get our league to 20 to 30 teams? So it's going and negotiating with arenas and teams and getting them set up in their new homes. And then just maintaining that. Then there's, the PR and the communication side. So I can say the biggest thing that you can learn from a league standpoint that will keep you organized is communication is key.
Of course, what is this differences between MASL2 versus MASL?
Well, the MASL2 is the second division. So we're more of a better fit for teams that maybe are starting off that don't have the wherewithal to jump right into the first division, and their budgets increase quite dramatically once you go to that point. So we're kind of a nice breeding ground for teams to be able to come in, learn how to become sustainable, and grow to the point that they can eventually jump into the MASL1. It's part of the reason that the pyramid was grown. It helps also from a player development standpoint. So if there's a player who maybe isn't quite ready for the majors, he can come into the M2, play a couple years, develop, and then jump up to the first division. You can also find new players because players might be signed to amateur contracts, but are perfectly, capable of playing at the pro levels. But again, it's about being that nice stopping ground for teams to be able to become sustainable before they jump up to the major leagues, which some teams may never do that. But our goal is obviously to be as supportive as possible for what each team's goals are to accomplish.
What are some of your future plans, of course, whenever it does come to becoming a deputy commissioner? Do you see yourself becoming a commissioner?
Yeah, I mean, it's funny when I was in my first job interview, and Chris can remember this. They asked me, what is your end all goal? And I said, to become the commissioner of Major League Soccer. I would say I absolutely still have that goal. I'm hopefully young enough, but for right now, I see such an opportunity to grow the sport of indoor soccer because it's built for television. It's built for the American sport consumer versus the outdoor game that some people seem to complain about because it's too slow, it's not high scoring. Well, indoor soccer is hockey and soccer combined. So you get scores in the 5 to 10 to 15 range. Teams can play more games and things like that. So absolutely, my goal is definitely to be the commissioner. I'm perfectly happy where I am to learn the ins and outs of the business for a couple of years, but then, certainly I know the MASL is looking for a new commissioner now. While I would say, today is not my day to step into that role, hopefully within the next 3 to 5 years, I'm built up, ready, and connected to be able to fill those shoes.
That's so amazing. What advice would you give upcoming future people looking to work in professional sports?
Yeah, so professional sports is the entertainment industry. It's cutthroat. You're not ever going to work a normal 9 to 5. Don't give up. If you have a hard fall, we've all had them. We've all had things where we've failed at. We've all had things that we've succeeded at. And again, I've been in it, 8 to 10 years. There's people like Chris who've been in it for 30. But you got to have a hard work ethic and try to do everything you can to keep a positive mentality that if you have a bad day, the next day is potentially going to be a better day. And it might be worse, but eventually things get better. And you have to be patient. You have to be willing to understand that problems are going to arise and not always fix themselves immediately, that sometimes it takes time. And then to network, and don't be afraid to open your mind. I had opportunities that I've gone and applied for jobs in the NBA and the NHL, and for whatever reason, fate has kept me in pro soccer and said, no, this is, your path. But I always say, be open. There's sports franchises across the country. There's leagues across the country. There's a lot of opportunity in a growing industry to work, but you have to be willing to have a really hard work ethic. Ticket sales is probably the easiest position to come into at an entry-level position. I did it, and it goes to show you can certainly work up that ladder as well. But like I said, work hard. Don't be afraid to ask questions for people who have seen some success in it, and they'll all tell you the same thing, that they've busted their butt getting where they are, and they're going to have to continue to work hard to stay where they are and grow from there.
That's amazing advice. Where can my listeners find you at on social media?
Yeah, I think LinkedIn is obviously the easiest one. If you look up Andrew Ross and search Syracuse University or Major Arena Soccer League 2, but I think my Twitter handle is at Andrew Ross FL, and I believe that's the same across the board for the rest of them. But definitely, if there's those listening that have interest in learning more about the sports industry, connect with me on LinkedIn, and happy to have a conversation.
Thank you again, Andrew Ross, for your interview, and best of luck in your future, wherever it may hold you in the MLS.
Great. Thank you, Brandon. Enjoy the rest of your day.
You too. You can find Brandon Sports Talk on Facebook at Brandon Sports Talk, Instagram at Brandon Sports Talk, Twitter at Talk_Brandon, and you can find me on YouTube at Brandon Sports Talk. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Thank you again, Andrew, for your interview, and best of luck.
You've been watching Brandon Sports Talk. Please feel free to like, share, and subscribe to Brandon Sports Talk on social media and on YouTube.